As we draw closer to the long-awaited release of Camellia and version 1.4, there are definitely many players that will likely be pulling for Camellia on release regardless of her kit. But for those that are still unsure if they should summon, Camellia's kit has officially been revealed along with her signature weapon, which may now provide all players with more of a sense of certainty on whether or not Camellia is a character for you. That being said, we still don't exactly have the official multipliers and inherent skills for Camellia's kit till her release. But given we know everything else regarding her kit along with the multipliers and effects for her signature weapon, I'll be breaking down Camellia's kit and signature weapon to show the exact value they hold and to provide you with some clarity on whether or not you should summon for Camellia and her weapon. Just before we jump into it, as always, would really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel for more WutheringWaves content and drop a like if you enjoyed the video. Now, as we already know, Camellia is a Havoc one-handed sword DPS character and her insane damage dealing capabilities do scale off basic attack damage. So kicking it off with her basic attacks, along with having great and definitely not questionable animations, the 5-string sequence allows you to activate a charged attack at the enemy once you perform 3 basic attacks or the heavy attack, which does have a great amount of range to it and it will likely be able to deal considerable damage. As for the resonant skill, upon activation it does allow Camellia to enter her secondary state known as Blossom Mode, which does grant access to Camellia's alternate design with red hair, along with a set of new attacks Camellia can only deal whilst tied up by her vines mid-air and is unable to move. Within Blossom Mode, the standard basic attacks are replaced by the Vining Waltz attack, which scales off basic attack damage, and when performing the 3rd hit from the Vining Waltz attack sequence, Blazing Waltz will be available to activate, which is a massive AoE attack that also scales off basic attack damage and seems to be capable of parrying any attack received. But timing the attack would be essential as it doesn't really look to last that long. Additionally, with the basic attacks and heavy attacks being replaced, the standard resonant skill is in fact also replaced by Floral Ravage, which again is also considered as basic attack damage and will allow Camellia to exit the Blossom Mode after dealing one last wide-ranged attack. So essentially, Camellia's Blossom Mode would pretty much be considered as her burst mode and is limited to her stamina. So you would want to ensure the enemy isn't going anywhere, or even better, guard broken, in order to make the most from her secondary state. Now, as for the core of Camellia's kit being the Forte circuit, the Forte cage is able to hold up to 100 Crimson Pistols, and you are able to acquire 100 through casting her intro skill or the Ephemeral attack. As for the purpose of Crimson Pistols, they are consumed whenever Camellia deals any basic attack or resonant skill, and for every 10 Crimson Pistols consumed, Camellia recovers 4 Concerto energy and obtains 1 Crimson Bud, stacking up to a total of 10. So with that, Camellia will be able to acquire 40 Concerto energy on top of her basic attacks and resonant skill through consuming Crimson Pistols, which would allow Camellia to fill her Concerto meter quicker than we have ever seen before. As for the Crimson Buds, it isn't exactly specified what they provide, but I can only assume each bud will provide an increase in damage that will stack up, and once you reach all 10 stacks, Camellia would likely become a much more powerful damage dealer. Now, after maxing the Concerto meter, Camellia's resonant skill is replaced by the Ephemeral attack, which will consume all Concerto energy, deals havoc damage considered as basic attack damage, and will finally allow Camellia to enter the budding mode. However, just in regards to the Ephemeral attack alone, due to the fact that this one attack consumes all of Camellia's Concerto energy, definitely means it will likely deal nuclear damage. Considering how valuable Concerto energy is for the flow of rotations, along with the fact that this is the first ability that consumes Concerto energy in exchange for damage. So with that in mind, and without even needing to know the damage multiplier, Camellia's Ephemeral attack will likely be one of the hardest hitting abilities in their game. Now again, after dealing the Ephemeral attack, Camellia will enter her final state known as Budding Mode and activate Sweet Dream, which will end once Camellia has consumed all 100 Crimson Pistols obtained from the Ephemeral attack or when she is switched off. When Sweet Dream is activated, it increases the damage multiplier for both variations of basic attacks and resonant skills. Additionally, along with the Ephemeral attack consuming all Concerto energy, it will consume all Crimson Buds, and for each Crimson Bud consumed, it will further increase the damage multiplier given from Sweet Dream. So essentially, before you pop the massive Ephemeral attack when you have maxed the Concerto meter, you ideally want to obtain as many Crimson Buds as possible in order to acquire the most damage multiplier multiplier stacks from Sweet Dream, enabling Camellia to hit her max damage potential. So with that, the Forte circuit is most definitely the core of Camellia's kit, allowing her to deal a burst of damage which will likely be considered as one of the most powerful abilities in the game, following with a ton of buffs being provided to increase the damage from Camellia's basic attacks and resonant skill. Now as for the remaining aspects to Camellia's kit, the Resonant Liberation just seems to deal liberation damage and provides nothing really special, which is completely fine considering the amount of value there is already in Camellia's Forte circuit. However, bear in mind on release it could in fact have an additional effect that just isn't stated as of now. As for the intro skill, it will allow for Camellia to obtain 100 Crimson Pistols along with attacking the enemy. So it is essential for Camellia to be able to activate her intro skill, otherwise she wouldn't receive any Crimson Pistols and will lose out on a lot of DPS. Which does double down on Sunhwa being Camellia's best in slot sub DPS, since she does have rapid Concerto energy generation. Lastly, as for the outro skill, after activating the ephemeral attack, Camellia will deal havoc damage whilst the next resonator switches in. Now with that, aside from the inherent skills, is Camellia's full kit breakdown, and it goes without saying, it does have a lot of potential, but there are some clear restrictions. Camellia essentially wants to build her way up to maxing out her Concerto meter along with obtaining as many Crimson Buds as possible, to then activate the ephemeral attack, which will likely deal a massive nuke to enemies and allows Camellia to enter her final state, where she is completely stacked with damage buffs to enable her basic attacks and resonant skills to deal a ton more damage. However, the fact that whilst Camellia is in the Blossom mode, which will be where she is dealing most of her damage, she will have restricted movement as she will be unable to move around mid-air. So as unique as it looks, it would definitely be frustrating when an enemy isn't in reach and is dealing ranged attacks, so they are intentionally keeping their distance. Additionally, Camellia's kit does seem to restrict her ability to quick swap, given she wants to remain on the field for a lot of the time, with there being time restrictions on the Crimson Bud stacks and the fact that Camellia would exit the budding mode and lose all buffs completely when switched out. Now some players may not mind Camellia not being able to quick swap, and I completely understand, but it does mean she is just less flexible within team building, which is overall a negative. However, her kit restrictions really aren't that severe, and the amount of potential damage she is capable of dealing does seem to outweigh them, ultimately making Camellia an absolute powerhouse of a DPS. Now as for the signature weapon, it has been confirmed to have a 24.3% crit rate main stat, and as for the passive, it increases attack by 12% unconditionally, increases basic attack damage bonus up to a max of 30% for 14 seconds when dealing basic attacks, and lastly, when consuming Concerto energy, gains a 40% basic attack damage bonus for 10 seconds. So in total, Camellia will be able to receive a massive 70% basic attack damage boost, which is absurd. Initially, the passive provided a 60% basic attack damage bonus for just dealing basic attacks, but with these changes it does definitely make Camellia's signature weapon a lot less flexible, as she will be the only character able to fully utilize the effects of the weapon, since no other character is capable of consuming Concerto energy other than through their outro skills. Of course, someone like Havoc Rover would be able to utilize Camellia's weapon since they do deal a lot of basic attacks, but fully utilizing the weapon just wouldn't be possible. However, considering that every other signature weapon provides a damage boost through their passive around the 48 to 54% region, Camellia's then offering 70% in total is on a completely different level and somewhat justifies the restrictiveness of it. As in exchange for the flexibility amongst other characters, Camellia alone will be able to use the most powerful weapon in the game by far. Now with that being said, I have mentioned in previous videos there is less of a need to pull for Camellia's weapon due to the fact that there are great 5-star alternatives in the game, consisting of the Emerald of Genesis and the Blazing Brilliance. With the Emerald of Genesis, it would be considered as Camellia's best alternative since she can utilize all of the effects the weapon provides completely. Also, since it is a standard banner weapon, everyone by now should have either picked it up from the guaranteed standard weapon banner or the weapon selector, so every player definitely has a perfect one-handed sword already or will soon have for Camellia. As for the Blazing Brilliance, Camellia wouldn't exactly be able to fully utilize all of the effects as you obtain a 54% resonant skill damage bonus, which really isn't that valuable as Camellia's resonant skills in the Blossom mode deal basic attack damage. However, due to the 12% attack increase and massive 48% crit damage increase, the Blazing Brilliance does end up being much more valuable than any other 4-star weapon and so would be a solid alternative. But of course the Emerald of Genesis will be much better overall. So the fact that there are 5-star alternatives you may already have, along with Camellia's weapon being extremely niche, would be the reasons to skip this weapon. Now that being said, if you don't have 2 5-star one-handed swords specifically, you may then want to consider picking up Camellia's weapon. Since Camellia's best sub DPS partners consisting of Sanhua, Danjin and Havoc Rover are all one-handed sword characters, essentially meaning you will need 2 one-handed swords for the team and you ideally want 5-star weapons, given they provide a lot more value than the underwhelming 4-star options. So with that, picking up Camellia's weapon would then be definitely worth it, as then you can provide the sub DPS with the Emerald of Genesis or Blazing Brilliance and can have Camellia use her own weapon. Additionally, even though Camellia's weapon is extremely niche, if you intend to main Camellia, then the weapon is completely worth it due to the massive damage increase it provides. Of course, Camellia will be able to get by without it, but the weapon is simply way too valuable for Camellia and so I would definitely suggest to pick it up, as it would certainly prolong her longevity in the game. Overall, Camellia is definitely exceeding expectations as I figured she was going to be a fun character to play with, but even without the actual multipliers, it's clear to see the amounts of self buffs there are in her own kit will allow her to deal some insane damage. Of course, I am being optimistic here and it could certainly turn out to be very different, as those self buffs could be required in order to just deal a considerable level of damage. But as I have mentioned in previous videos, Kuro will likely not fail such a hyped character and will want to ensure they do perform very well, especially due to there being a few minor restrictions in her kit in terms of team flexibility and movement. I would argue that they should then allow her to deal top tier damage with those as a cost. So with that, I do believe Camellia will definitely be one of the best DPS characters in the game. But to be compared to Jinxin, we will need to see her multipliers for sure before mentioning anything. All in all, if you do require a DPS character for your account, then Camellia is definitely going to be a great character to pick up, and in regards to her weapon once again, if you intend to main Camellia for a while and you don't have 2 5-star one-handed swords, then it would be ideal to pick up Camellia's weapon. However, as a reminder, version 2.0 will likely be right after 1.4, which may drop even stronger DPS characters and Jinxi's rerun banner. So if you aren't fully interested in Camellia's playstyle and design and you want another top tier damage dealer, then of course you can skip and save for 2.0. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel for more WutheringWaves content, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. Also drop a comment down below on whether you will be summoning for Camellia and her weapon or will you be skipping. And yeah, hope to catch you guys later.